Hello, my name is Maria Visubova and you're at my channel Fertilizers Jazz. Here we talk about events, trends, technologies in the world of fertilizers and agriculture. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and let's jazz! Today I'm very excited to open to you a new topic which is very complex but extremely important for the agricultural production and fertilizers market respectively. This topic is weather. Nowadays, we as a mankind have gained a lot of knowledge about different weather phenomena. We have developed advanced technologies to forecast the weather, and sometimes we even guess. Apart from extreme volatility, there are also certain regular weather-related phenomena that change each other in certain sequence. Their impact is quite well studied, and the effect can be forecasted also quite accurately. One of the most well-known phenomena is La Nina, El Nino. And right now it is the time when La Nina enters the scene. In order to discuss this hot topic, today I am thrilled to host a super cool guest, Christopher Hyde, meteorologist and senior sales manager at Meteomatics. I am happy to welcome you, Christopher, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Christopher, I'm very glad that today, with your help, I will be able to uncover for myself, first of all, and of course to our watchers, the topic, the importance of which for agriculture and fertilizers market is really difficult to overestimate. Weather is everything starts from there, from the weather. Weather is what rules the behavior of the farmer. All farmers' praise and hopes are dedicated to the gods of the weather, since agriculture started 10,000 years ago before Christ. So now the mankind, of course, knows much more about weather, about how to predict the weather, but of course still praise clearly, because we cannot control it. And there are so many interesting aspects of this topic, but today I would like to focus on one of them. And actually, this is a hot one, I think, this year specifically, which is the arrival of La Nina phenomena and its impact on at the weather itself, at weather patterns, and respectively the agriculture. So my first question to you, it's a question from a rookie. Can you please explain what is this La Nina, El Nino phenomena all about?
Yeah, La Nina and El Nino, they're naturally occurring weather phenomena. It really involves the water temperatures in the Central Pacific. In the case of La Nina, it involves the cooling of the ocean's water temperatures in the Central and Eastern Pacific. The trade winds have a lot to do with this. They're stronger than usual in La Nina, pushing more water towards Asia, while what's called upwelling, basically cooler waters at the lower levels of the ocean, come up to the surface and cools down the surface air for water temperatures for areas off the coast of the Americas, North and South America. And that cools down the water temperatures there. The jet stream is another piece that's involved with this. Jet stream typically moves northward. For the US, for example, that usually brings the southern US more into a drought and drier conditions, and the northern US, Pacific Northwest into Canada, a lot more rain up there. Typically, every 3 to 5 years, we have La Nina or El Nino. It tends to oscillate back and forth. Recently, we were coming out of an El Nino, and as you mentioned, we're going towards La Nina. Prior to that, we had 3 La Ninas in a row, what's called a triple La Nina. So the normal, if there is such a thing as normal, usually lasts or occurs every 3 to 5 years, but this is certainly out of normal from the typical cycle as of late. So hopefully that explains La Nina a little bit better for you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. From a complete rookie, now I moved at least one step forward. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we now are in the period of time, in our human history where we talk a lot about climate change, about how we influenced and influencing the climate. And how about this weather phenomenon? Are these phenomenon somehow changing if we take, for example, 100 years from today? Do we see now more severe El Nino effects or not? How it works?
Yeah, I mean, we have data going back to the 1800s of past El Nino and La Nina events. I would say the La Ninas tend to be a little bit more frequent, especially the last 50 to 75 years than El Ninos. The El Ninos out of the two, comparing contrasting out of the two, the El Ninos tend to be a little bit more severe, more extreme than La Ninas. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we're coming out of a El Nino from last winter that peaked and going towards a La Nina. But the phenomenon's always been around. I would say with respect to climate change and the trends and globally for both water temperatures and air temperatures, that is enhanced when El Nino or La Nina is moderate to stronger. That has enhanced the effects. You certainly have more storminess. You have what's called these atmospheric rivers, again, relating to an example in North America that come crashing into the west coast of North America and in other areas globally with respect to flooding in Europe, for example, and areas of Asia, East Asia, China in particular. The effects of this phenomenon has been more severe or more extreme because of overall climate conditions trending on the warmer side, both water temperatures and air temperatures.
I see. And so then, do I understand correctly that those extreme things in terms of weather patterns that we saw in 2024, like, for example, some of them you already mentioned, like these hurricanes in the US, or these extreme heat waves that we had in Southern Europe, followed by these floods, and this like extreme temperatures in India that were happening, is that one of those effects of El Nino?
Absolutely is, and they tend to be a lot more frequent over the last few decades in particular, especially since 2000. We've noticed a big change globally in extreme events because of the water temperatures being above normal and exceedingly above in many cases, as well as the correlation with that in air temperatures. You brought up hurricanes as an example. Where we have the last string of hurricanes recently that's impacted the Gulf of Mexico. Helene is one out there here in late September, and the reason why these things rapidly intensify is because of the water temperatures being above normal. Whether it's hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin or typhoons in the Western Pacific, it's the same deal where the water temperatures have been rapidly intensifying. Where in the past, prior to the latest century here, the water temperatures were not as warm or excessively above normal. So right now we're in a phase that we've seen for the last few decades now, if not a few more than that, where once these things materialize, El Nino, La Nina aside, you can have these storms intensify pretty rapidly. And not just hurricanes or typhoons, but the flooding in various cases, or the lack thereof. You had mentioned the excessive heat in India. That had a lot to do with the drought conditions that's there that enhances high temperatures with the lack of soil moisture in the region. And then we'll talk about this a little later, but another dry area is Brazil. Brazil has been grappling with a major drought as of late, and there is certainly a tie with climate change there as well.
I see. Thank you. So now let's move to the future. In September, correct me if I'm wrong, September, October, we should see the replacement of La Nina. El Nino by La Nina. So what should we expect? What should we as people and what should we as agriculture expect because of that? And
Yeah.
when actually?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it typically peaks in the December through February period of a given year. That's usually the highest correlation with when an El Nino or La Nina peaks. So it certainly would have a bearing on, speaking of Brazil, on South America weather, as an example, given their growing season is just starting. So typical conditions, once we get into late this year, early next year, the closer you get to the Central Pacific, that has the highest correlation. So, for example, it usually is pretty rainy in Southeast Asia and parts of Australia and that area. It typically is rainy for the northern part of Brazil, but cooler and drier for areas of the southern part of that country. Now, different variations of La Nina matter, and we'll talk about that as well. In the US, it's typically dry in the southern part of the US, cool and wet for the northern part of the area. Uh, Areas such as like Europe or the Black Sea region, they're a little displaced from the Central Pacific, more landlocked, so there's not as correlated there as much. So we have to look at a lot of trends and other meteorological factors besides El Nino and La Nina. But typical has gone out the window a lot of cases with respect to climate change. So you got to kind of look at the trends and how things have been looking at in that regard, and then bring in the La Nina effects at the same time.
I see. And how do you, as meteorologists, predict how long it will last? When exactly it comes? When exactly it ends? Do you have some, crystal ball for that, or what is that ball for you?
Yeah. Now, there's a variety of subseasonal models that we look at. Typically, like to look at the models in a way where an average of all these models. Columbia U IRI is a good source for this in predicting La Nina and El Nino conditions. The weaker the whatever is, whether it's El Nino or La Nina, it tends to last a little quicker, more on the agenda as far as several months, maybe 4, 6, 7, 8 months. The stronger the El Nino that we just came from lasted a lot longer than forecast. I know we were talking about the potential for La Nina as early as this spring, earlier this year, and it was delayed, and a lot had to do with the El Nino being so strong that it took a while for things to cool down in the Central Pacific as far as the water temperatures, what I described at the top of the show here. But for this time around, we're thinking this weak La Nina will likely be weak, maybe touch on moderate, depending on the model that you mentioned, or that the model that has been biased, and tends to peak, as I mentioned, late this year, early next year, right around January, and it'll go back towards the spring time frame, April, May time frame, back towards neutral or a normal state in the Pacific. So I think going beyond the crystal ball for the next 6 to 7 months and into the growing season for northern hemisphere, I think all signs are pointing to have this La Nina go back to neutral, if not possibly flirting with weak El Nino by the time we head to next spring. But we usually adjust our forecast and look at these numbers pretty regularly. So we have some time until that point, but at least for now, for sure, a weak La Nina to possibly moderate, but the trend has it warming up towards neutral, if not weak El Nino by the time we get to next spring.
Okay, thank you. So, what would you recommend right now to watch, for example, for the agricultural companies, agricultural producers, how to adjust from what we just came from and to end 24 and beginning 25?
Yes, I think the area to watch now is South America, in particular Brazil. And, this is where I alluded to earlier, where they have a major drought there now. A lot of that has to do with the lingering effects of the El Nino, and it's still lingering. I mean, there are some signs in the seasonal forecast of Brazil, especially the northern part of the country, outside the major producing areas, in like say Mato Grosso and areas further south, to be have an uptick of moisture once the La Nina starts to really kick in. But the areas of the south, I think, will remain dry. In the heart of the producing area in Brazil, South Brazil, and maybe even lingering into Argentina as well. And I know Argentina even has the effects of the rivers as far as transporting grain from Brazil down in the Paraná region. So that's probably going to continue. So if there is any uptick in moisture in the growing season for Brazil or even Argentina, it'll probably be mid to latter part of the growing season. So that's going to have a big bearing on planting, and having enough moisture to germinate the seeds in that area. I would say secondarily, something to monitor is in the Black Sea area, because the eastern part of Ukraine has had a pretty good drought, sort of harvest time right now, but we'll have to see where trends have been going. It's been pretty dry, even going into consecutive growing seasons for that area. So if things start to trend towards a La Nina, albeit, there's not a lot of correlation in the Black Sea area or Europe, we'll have to see how this winter unfolds for that area to see how much moisture is for planting season, or even concern for wheat. So that would be secondarily another area to monitor for this upcoming, not just over the winter, but the upcoming growing season in the spring.
And how about US? You just mentioned that you're expecting one more hurricane. We just saw the Francine, which influenced and actually disrupted some operations in the ports, which are obviously important both for agriculture and fertilizers producers that we talk. Now we'll have one more. So how would you, what would you forecast for the US in this respect?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right on the hurricanes. Helene right now, the way the remnants are going to be impacting the eastern Midwest. So that could slow harvest down a little bit as well. There's even signs of the eastern Midwest being above normal precipitation as we head deeper into the autumn period. So we'll have to monitor that to see how that impacts the harvest progression of things. But the overall seasonal outlook, it tends to favor drier in areas of the southern plains, southern part of the U.S. With a La Nina, but the northern plains into the Canadian prairies, that would be an area that would have an uptick in moisture over the winter. So certainly the drier areas further south, that will certainly have a bearing on wheat during the winter. So we'll have to have an eye on that. And compared to last year for the strong El Nino, where you had a hard time getting any cold air to generate out of Canada, this year with a weak La Nina, your volatility is going to be higher. So if you combine lack of snow cover in those wheat areas with a chance for cold air to come down, we'll have to watch any winter kill threats for this upcoming winter. So that would be certainly a risk to monitor compared to last winter in the US.
One more country which we in our fertilizers market are always following very, very carefully is India, because in fertilizers, the whole fertilizers market is driven by if India purchases this year and how much it purchases. And how much it purchases always depends on the monsoon, if it is healthy or not. And if it is not, the whole fertilizers world will be very disappointed, I would say. So how do you see the things for India specifically, and in general for Southeast Asia, how this La Nina will change?
Yeah, the further you get in Southeast Asia, the higher the correlation is with La Nina. So areas in Indonesia, Australia, up towards Vietnam. That's an area that would have an uptick in moisture, above normal precipitation in that area going into deeper this year and early next year. India, not so much of a correlation there. I think the trends of the drier conditions will continue. You certainly will have a monsoon season, but I don't think it's going to be as robust of a monsoon versus normal. And I know the monsoon, kind of comes and goes depending on the time of the year. So unfortunately, I think the trend continues with the majority of the time being drier than normal, as opposed to being above normal for the major producing areas there.
I see. Thank you very much. So in general, the La Nina will last, as you said, until mid next year, right? And what will be next?
Yeah, around springtime, for the most part. A lot of times these models tend to exaggerate the timing, make it shorter than expected. And a perfect example was this past El Nino, where they thought it was going to be shorter and it ended up being a lot longer in duration. So I think springtime, for right now anyways, as we talk here in late September, early October timeframe, is kind of the projection of where it would cross the threshold to neutral. And it'll be a bit of a longer stretch by the time we get into weak El Nino, probably by next summer, I would imagine.
I see. Thank you very much, Christopher. And perhaps one of my last questions, I have plenty of more because it is a very, very interesting topic, but I would propose that we rejoin again to discuss all those. So one perhaps of my last questions, can you please tell a bit more about Meteomatics, because I'm very interested, what is your company actually doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, Meteomatics has been around for about 12 years now, based outside of Zurich, Switzerland. And our claim to fame is a data-first company. So if you're interested in data from our robust API, in building out your own yield model, for example, we have all the right parameters for that use case. Or if you want a graphical representation of the weather, all these weather models that commodity traders utilize, we have our MEDX dashboard to get access to all those models that come out globally, focused on all the major producing areas. We launched a Euro 1K weather model, high resolution. The expectation is to launch that early next spring for the US. So that'll give you more timely and accurate conditions. And then finally, we have the modern version of weather balloons, what's called our Meteo drones, that go up in the atmosphere, that can be launched any time of day, give you a lot of accuracy fed into that 1K model to produce a lot better results in trying to make any trading decisions or any operational decisions in agriculture.
Sounds great. And I wish you and Meteomatics all the best. And I want to thank you very much, Christopher. It was a pleasure for me. And I'm sure myself and our watchers knew a lot of new things today. I will be very happy to see you here again, because there are so many uncovered questions and topics that I think should be uncovered, because they're really very important both for agricultural production and, of course, for us as fertilizers, part of the whole agricultural family. So thank you very much again, and have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. As usually, I will leave all credentials of Christopher and Meteomatics in the comments. Please let me know in the comments which other weather-related topics you would like to learn about, and I will be very glad to discuss it with Christopher again. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and see you soon.